So today we're going to see about the custom connectors, which is the latest feature released in Zoho Creator. And in today's agenda, we're going to cover what is an API and what does authentication and authorization has to do with it, and what are connections in Creator, and then we're going to see the custom connectors. Finally, we're going to see a live example of using custom connectors in Zoho Creator. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So what exactly is an API? So ever wonder how our different devices connect each other, how different applications connect each other, and how do we get data from one application to another application? So yeah, simple, everything, it's because of the API. So to put it in a simple term, assume that you're at a restaurant and you're at a table and you have a menu with list of choices, and you need to order a food that the kitchen at the back end is going to prepare for it. So now the critical link is to communicate your order to the back to the kitchen. That is where the API or the waiter comes in. So the waiter is just a messenger who is going to get get the order from you and gives it back to the kitchen. The chef prepares the food and gives it back to the waiter, and later it brings it back to your table. So the customer is nothing but the application. The waiter is the API, who is a messenger, is going to communicate between the server and the application. So it gets the request from you, and it go back to the server and gets the response and gives it back to you. In simple terms, let's say you have a web application and you have connected that web application through your internet and you're performing an API. So this API is going to communicate with the server to get the resources from the database that you need, and the web server through the API and gives it back to your application. As simple as that. So API is nothing but it's just for communicating between the two services. So, what does authentication and authorization has to do with it? Well, while performing an API, we need to make sure that only the approved person have to perform the API. We don't want everyone to perform the API to get the data from the resource, right? So that is where the authentication and authorization comes in, and many of us gets confused with the term authentication and authorization. Let us see what each of them mean. Authentication. Authentication simply answers the question who you are. So you're going to give your identity that you are the person that you intend to be, and that once you are the person that you intend to be, once you prove that, and that is we call it authentication. Once you are authenticated, then then that's where the authorization comes in. Whether you're allowed to do that specific task. So once you are the person that you intend to be, and what are all the actions that you can do, that is where the authorization comes in. Let's say you're going to the office every day, and you have an ID card which lets you to get into the office. That is where the authentication. That is where that is when you place your ID card. It tells you that you are the person that you intend to be, the server. This is happening only if you're registered to the server. The server checks whether you are whether you are the person, whether you are the authenticated person in the company. Yes, if you are the person, the door gets open and then you get in. And there are some places in the office that you can visit that you are authorized to access, and there are some premises that you are not authorized. That is where the authorization comes in, that only few specific places that you can access and few specific places that you cannot access. Those limitations, that we call it as scopes. So in simple, authentication answers the question who you are, whereas the authorization answers the question what you can do. And now let's look into the types of authentication. So we have basic authentication, the key based authentication, as well as the OAuth authentication, which is the most secured way. So let's see the first basic authentication. So in this basic authentication, you're going to communicate the client. In this place we call it as the third party application, that you're going to request the server to get the resource. The server in turn asks you to give the username and the password, which then you will provide the username and password to the server. The server will then authenticate whether you are the right person to access the resource. If yes, it then gives you the resource that you are requesting for, and that's where the basic authentication. In simple terms, the username and the password is just used to communicate. Is used to communicate with the API, to communicate between the applications. Now let's get into the key-based authentication. So the key-based authentication, where you as a user log in to the application, the third-party application, and then you log in with your password, and the authorization server identifies whether you are an authenticated person. If yes, then it will generate a token, which is a key, which is a secret key, which allows you to access the resource. And this token can be used to again access the resource, and you can get the requested data. And this token is, it is valid for the time until you revoke it. So this is one of the authentication that is required to perform an API. Now let's get into the third type of authentication, which is nothing but the OAuth authentication. So here, the client or the application, you're going to communicate with the resource owner. The resource owner will then authenticate whether you are the authorized person, and then it will give you the authorization code. Using that authorization code, you're going to again go back to the authorization server to get the tokens, access token and refresh token. So using these access token, you're going to get the data from the resource with limited access. So the key point to perform, the key point to get the data from that resource is to get the access token. So in order to get the access token, you have to get the authorization code, and through the authorization code, you have to get the access token and once you got the access token, then you can perform an API. And these access token will be valid or only for few minutes or few hours. And later, using the refresh token, you can generate the new access token and then perform an API. So what does connection have to do with this? So the connections will take care of these authentication. Let's say you're performing an OAuth authentication. As you can see, you have to perform 3 steps in order to perform an API task. So the connection will take care of that, and you don't have to worry about those actions. So as I said, the access token will be valid only for a few minutes, and then you have to use again the refresh token to generate an access token. So many of us perform unsafe method like saving the authorization code, the access token, and the refresh token within the application in a form or in a report or within the code. So in order to bypass this unprotected methods, we offer connections. There are some connections readily available to connect your creator application with the third party services, and then you can perform the seamless integration. So it lets you to integrate with the various cloud services, and you can easily authorize with the parameters requested, and then it mostly saves time and effort and unprotected way of saving the credentials or in the means of the code or in report, which can be get by any user. So even there are a list of connection, the several services like payment, SMS, accounting, and CRM services, which is readily available to integrate your Creator application with the other services. So, these are the built-in connectors which are available in Zoho Creator, which you can directly integrate Creator with QuickBooks or Expensify from PayPal. So we have categorized it and we have provided all the types of services over here. So now, custom connectors in Zoho Creator. What does custom connectors offers you? Since there are some pre-built connectors available, there are some services which are not available by default. And using custom connectors, you can integrate any services with Zoho Creator. You can connect, you can create your own connector and establish a connection with the desired service. You can authorize, it even supports all methods of authentication to perform the API. So let's get into the demo now. I'm going to upload the files which are stored from Zoho Creator to Google Drive. I have this order management application and I've been maintaining all the orders of a customer in this report. And I've also generated invoices and stored in one of the file upload fields in Zoho Creator. So now what I want to do is on click of this button upload to Google Drive, I want the corresponding invoice to be uploaded to the Google Drive. So in order to do that, we're going to use an API to communicate Google Drive and Zoho Creator. So I have this Google Drive API opened up here. This is to create files from the third-party services into the Google Drive. So this is the URL that we're going to use to perform an API, and the method is post, and we have the mandatory parameter as the upload type. Either it can be media, multipath, or resumable. In this case, I'm uploading a PDF file, so it will be multipath. And to authorize an API, we have the scope, various scopes available over here. So now, in order to connect the Zoho Creator application with Google Drive, we don't have a built-in connector readily available here. So now I'm going to use custom connector to establish a connection between Google Drive and Zoho Creator to perform an API and upload the file from Creator to Google Drive. So let's see how we can establish the connection and what are the key points that we need to keep in mind. So you can create the connections under the microservices section available in the home page, and you can find the plus create new option and you'll find the connections. Here you can find all the built-in connectors available, and since Google Drive is not available over here, I'm going to click on new custom connector. I'm going to name it as Google Drive, and we can give the description as to upload files from Zoho Creator to Google Drive. I'm going to click on create. So you can upload the endpoint logo, the product logo here, and you can just click on save and continue, and you can see all the three types of authentication available over here. And for the Google Drive, I'm going to perform OAuth 2 authentication, as it is the most secure and the safest way to perform an API. So now it's prompting me to apply the parameters to authenticate my Google account in Zoho Creator. So I need to add the client ID, client secret, authorization URL, refresh token URL, token URL to perform this. So let me go back to the Google console, and I've already created a credentials over here. I'm just going to edit it, and I'll be getting those information. The client ID, I'll be applying it over here, and the client secret. I'm applying it over here. And for the authorization refresh token, I've been saving them in one of my notes. This is the token URL. And I'm going to click on save. So now it shows the bearer token, the advanced parameter, and when it expires. So here it depends on different services, as most of the services will have this default time as 3600 seconds. Even for Google and Creator, it's 3600 seconds. The service which you are performing, if it has different timeline, kindly upload the specified timeline. And then we are going to authorize it. So once the authentication is done, we're going to authorize. We're going to limit what are all the things that this connector can do. So I'm going to just apply one of the scope, and I'm going to add it as upload files. Paste the scope. I'm going to add it. Once you have added all these information, everything will be under draft. Once you mark it as ready, you will be able to add connection. Let's say if you have added multiple scopes, you can create connection for one of the scope and enable that connection to few specific application. It's not necessary that you have to enable all the scopes, and it's not necessary that you have to create a specific scope for just one connector. You can just create one connector and add all the scopes, and while creating a connection, you can add only the required scope to that. So I'm going to add G Drive Creator, select it, and click on authorize. So now that the connection is created, so it will prompt me to authorize it. Creator. So once I click on authorize, it will not allow me to proceed further, since I'm recording this, since I'm sharing the screen, and due to security reasons, authenticating while recording the screen is not possible. So I've already developed, these are all the steps that you need to follow, and during the authentication it will give you some steps. All you have to do is proceed. You have to read the information and read the points, and you have to proceed further in order to authenticate. Once it is successfully authenticated, you will get this, it will be created something like this, and then this is the link name that we will be using in the API to perform. And here there will be list of application that you wish to enable to the application. So once this connection is enabled to this application, only this application can perform an API with limited access. Only, let's say if you just want your users to create the file, not to get the file or download the file, you can limit those access under the scopes and enable that specific connection to that application. So since I couldn't perform an authentication in the screen share, I've already configured one over here. Let me just show you over here, which is the same client ID, client secret, the rest is same, and I've added a connection to it. And this connection is Google Drive, which I have added over here. So now that our connection is ready, let's create an API. I'm going back to my application, order management, all orders. Here is my button, and I'm going to edit my button, and I'm going to add a workflow to it. So I've already set up that code. I'm going to explain it to you. So this is the connection. So this is the URL that I'm using to perform an API as mentioned in this document, and the type is post. And for the parameter, the required parameter, the upload type is multipart. And the file, I've been saving this file, saving the invoices in one of the file called order invoice, and I'm mapping it. And under the connection, I have added the already established connection over here, and I'm also viewing the response here, and I'm disabling the button once the file is uploaded to Google Drive. So once everything is ready, let's test this out. Okay, as you can see, there is no files. Let me upload Susan's drive. As you can see, the file ID has been successfully as you can see, the API is success, and I'm able to get the file ID, uploaded file ID over here. Let's go back here, and we got Susan's record over here. Similarly, let me try with different. Let me try Ashley's. Upload to drive. It is successful. I got the drive ID. If you don't want to view this response, you can just simply remove that specific code of line. I got Ashley's invoice into the Google Drive. So this is how you can create custom connectors and integrate Creator application with other services. Not only with the other services, you can even integrate your Creator application with another account as well. And once the custom connector is ready to use, please note that it is not possible to edit the credentials. That is the client ID, the client secret cannot be edited. You can just edit the connection name. You can edit the description and logo. However, under the authentication, everything will be disabled.